Thank you. Thank you all for joining us. Happy New Year. As you know, we do an Ask Me Anything call once a month as keepers of the public purse. And just to talk about what we're focusing on, but not only last year, but this year, continue to pursue smart growth policies in our retirement system, which has reached a tentative record high valuation. Preliminary calculations showed the pension plan assets rose to over $105 billion with a one-year return of over 14.5%. These are unofficial and audited numbers, but it shows that the amount of money that's under management at DST through the investment management division is at $138 to $139 billion, which keeps it in the category of the 27th largest pool of public money in the world. Secondly, on the state health plan, we've created a statewide network of medical providers under our Clear Pricing Project model. Clear Pricing was launched to end secret contracts, increase billing transparency, drive down cost, and give state health plan members more power over their health care decisions. It's ironic, and we'll get into the health care in just a moment, that the more I think about this, the more I've come to conclude that people having access to their health care pricing is almost a human right, in my opinion. And this is something that we should be heavily focused on very importantly. And then we're also going to talk about the Local Government Commission and our increased transparency, which starts today. With that, I'll open it up for questions.
Anyone have a question for the treasurer?
This is Jeff. 14.5%. Pretty amazing, Dale. You want to share your secrets?
Well, all the credit goes to the investment management division, the Federal Reserve, and the stock market, and obviously many of our investment managers. Anytime that the markets go up, if you look back over the 40-year history of the North Carolina retirement system, you'll see that when markets really explode upward, our returns aren't as high as the market. And when the market collapsed, like it has done 2 times this century, this century in the last 19 years, where the Standard & Poor's 500 has lost half its value twice in the last 19 years. All that goes into the fact that we're obviously in the investment business, but more importantly than ever in North Carolina's history, we're in the check delivering business. This is not a college endowment. This is not a pool of money where we can just turn the spigot on and off based on our investment returns. The plan is spending out over $6 billion per year in gross benefits, nearly $3 billion in net benefits per year. And so we are doing what we always said that we would do. We are preserving, strengthening, but always working on ways to sustain the plan going forward.
Did you have another question, Jeff? Follow-up?
Well, I know several years ago, under Dale's predecessor, I believe the decision was made to minimize management services for monies outside of our own capabilities. That's obviously still the case?
Yeah, well, that decision was really made, we instituted that when I became the treasurer to try to internalize more of our investments. And as we sit here this morning, over half of the money that is in the pension plan, and this money belongs to those that teach, those that protect, and otherwise serve our state and local governments. Over half of that money is being internally managed right now at amazing rates and amazing efficiencies.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave Mildenberg, you have a question?
Yeah, there's a notice on the LGC agenda. Is that something you want to talk about at this right now, Dale? Or?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. Thank you, Dave. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
We put out a press release yesterday about our intention going forward to have a media call-in only line for the members of the media across North Carolina. This came as a result of actually listening to folks like you, Dave, who have a really keen interest in what's going on at the Local Government Commission. For those of you who aren't familiar, it's Local Government Commission has been in existence for nearly 100 years, and it was came into existence right after the bankruptcy of Asheville, where the legislature and the leaders of North Carolina at that time felt like there needed to be something in the Treasurer's office that would help entities when they go to issue debt. There's over 1,300 entities that apply to issue debt for the Local Government Commission. They're the ones you think of most often, which is the state itself, the counties, the cities, but also a lot of water and sewer districts, universities, hospitals, and the like. As we look into 2020, and as I have realized since I've been the treasurer of North Carolina, how important many of these agenda items are, I felt like that people should have access, especially the media should have access to these issues. You know, over the last couple of years, we get questions about borrowing money to do dredging in Currituck County. We get questions about transportation bonds. We get questions about the city of Eureka, which we just took over because of a default. Other things that are going on Cliffside out your way, Dave, with water and sewer districts. We just felt like the topics around the Local Government Commission are so important, especially on the two major topics that we're facing right now, which are rising healthcare costs and rising transportation costs through the North Carolina Department of Transportation, that we felt like that, especially with those two areas, that folks like you and others that are on this phone deserve to have access to this without having to drive for 6.5, or in some cases 9 hours to get here.
Follow up, Dave?
Well, it's always worth driving to Raleigh-Durham to know what's going on. So my question is, Rex Hospital is on the agenda seeking $200 million financing. And it's a revenue bond, so I'm not clear on what is the reason that the LGC even has to look at that, since it's not apparently an obligation of state government.
Well, I don't have the subject matter expert here who could probably answer that in 15 words or less.
Yeah.
I believe that they come through the LGC because they want to issue bonds through our facility, which allows them, they're the investors in those bonds, to get double tax exemption and in many instances to receive the lowest possible interest rates.
Okay.
But we will follow up with you with an answer by the experts at the LGC after the call.
Well, and second, related to the LGC, is like last time you held a meeting, there was a issue involving Shelby and the Department of Transportation. It was very complex. I followed up with the city manager, and just bottom line, I wonder if there's been any movement on that, or if you had any other discussions on that matter, which is, yeah.
Well, thank you. Shelby is obviously not Charlotte, and it's one of our small towns, and they came before the LGC to borrow over $5 million in the last meeting. And when I started investigating what the purpose of this money was for, the purpose for the money was to do a real estate closing for some right-of-way with Norfolk and Southern. And the purpose of the use of the money was to go toward a Rails to Trail initiative in that community. When we started inquiring about why was there a need to borrow money, we were informed that there was a grant which was applied for and received, and awarded, almost a year ago, that the DOT was going to forward the money in order to pay for this project. So now you have a small town who was not able to receive the money that they were awarded for this grant, who's now having to come before the LGC to borrow money for the $5 million because the closing had to happen in December. So, Dave, two things about this. We continue to monitor it. Number one, I want to be assured myself, and I want to assure the people of this state, especially the people of the community of Shelby, who are now paying interest on this debt, that this money, much of which was coming from the federal government from a grant for Rails to Trails initiative across the country, that money wasn't already sitting at DOT. That would be very disturbing if the money had already come from Washington, D.C. to Raleigh, but Raleigh wasn't able to send it to Shelby for this real estate closing. So that's the number one concern. The second concern is, as I've said on this call and through other types of medium, the DOT was writing checks they couldn't cash. And I've said it, and I'm saying it again this morning. And when it's my understanding on this Rails to Trail situation, Dave, that this is my understanding. It may not be the total understanding, but my understanding is all the DOT had to do was to forward this money to Shelby. Shelby would do the real estate closing with Norfolk and Southern for the right-of-way. And then as soon as the deal was closed, the DOT could then wire or tell the folks in Washington, D.C. where this grant was approved and say, this deal has been closed, this money has been paid, now reimburse us. So the fact that the DOT could not bridge, so to speak, or float, so to speak, that loan for however many days or weeks that would have taken is very disturbing when you start talking about an agency that has cash flow of billions of dollars a year, and we're not able to float or bridge a loan to a small town in North Carolina.
Anything else, Dave?
Well, I guess the big picture then is, if you just, and I guess it's a fluid situation, but are you more satisfied with how their cash flow situation is working right now, a month later?
I'm less satisfied. I'm less satisfied because they, from my understanding and what I've seen, they put out a what they call this cash report, but the cash report doesn't show the payables. I think the people of North Carolina deserve to know what, not just the payables they say are payable, that they are likely to pay. That's not how accounting works. A payable is something that's estimable, probable, and that you owe. So I think that there needs to be a tremendous amount of more work done, not just on this little piece of paper that shows cash balances, but I think the people of North Carolina deserve to know what they owe. And the reason I'm saying this so emphatically is that because of the attention that's been brought to this issue, people come up to me every week who tell me a story about how they're not being paid by the DOT. That's just not a coincidence. And this is not just in Raleigh either. And so I think that, especially with work that has already been done through the DOT, that people deserve to be paid for the work. I can tell you that if the vendor who did the work didn't perform, the DOT would be on them about their performance and their timeliness. And I think it should work both ways. There's no contractor or vendor in this state who, if they perform their duty and they've checked all the check marks, should not be paid for what they've done.
Okay, well, I guess we can follow up with them, but yeah.
Thank you.
One other thing, though, related to backtrack, Rex Healthcare, Rex Hospital Inc. I should know this, and I can call them, but are employees of Rex Healthcare state employees?
Another fluid question, Dave. The biblical answer is no yesterday, no today, and I presume no tomorrow. But on December 15th, just a few weeks ago, there was a transfer of employees where they transferred, I may get this backwards, where they transferred from Rex Healthcare as an entity to Rex Hospital, which is an entity that's been dormant maybe for 40 or 45 years. I sat with the folks at Rex and still have not gotten a satisfactory answer by why that was done. I was told it was done in order to consolidate HR purposes, and but when I asked if the HR function was going to be within the shared services of UNC Healthcare, the answer was no. So I'm really not sure what happened. All I know is that employees got a notice that said, as of December 15th, you're going to be working for this other entity. And I know that, Dave, to your point, we received lots of calls in our call center of people who work for Rex Hospital who are asking the same question that you're asking. Have we been, are we going to be state employees for the pension and health care? And the president of that organization has said the answer to those questions is no.
Whereas UNC healthcare employees are state employees?
Correct.
Yeah.
As far as we can tell. Because there's, as you know, a lot of different layers of UNC healthcare. You bear with me a minute, Dave? I got it. Lots of different layers of UNC healthcare, but for the most part, all the folks that work for UNC healthcare are state employees for purposes of the pension plan and the state health plan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Seth, what's on the minds of the folks out at TBJ?
Hey, same thing as always. I was just wondering kind of what 2020 looks like for the CPP. Do y'all have any specific plans there? Is it going to be a push like it was last year?
Thank you for your question, Seth. I can say in the spirit of the Democratic presidential debates that I think are going to be airing next week, this is the only issue that Warren Buffett, Jeff Bezos, Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden, the other folks running for president, the president of the United States himself, and his DHHS secretary all agree on. And that is that we can no longer have hidden pricing in healthcare. It is affecting folks in a very dramatic way, especially the working folks of our society. Since then, as of last Thursday, as you probably saw, a report came out from the New England Journal of Medicine and Harvard University that questioned the benefits of hospital consolidations as it related to the quality of health care. This is the first report to come out in the United States that talked about what we have been talking about for 20 months, and that is that the consolidation of health care, we believe, leads to lower quality, less access, and higher cost for our citizenry. And so when you ask your question about what 2020 looks like, we know that we're on the right side of history on this issue. And the fact that we have the major nonprofit hospitals in this state who, even after all being offered 100% profit as a nonprofit, said no to clear pricing and said no to those that teach and those that protect and those that otherwise serve. So we are stepping on the gas for healthcare in 2020. We are partnering with the 25,000 providers who did say yes to get rid of secret contracts. We're starting to differentiate between the actual cost between those providers and the ones that did not sign up for clear pricing. Then we're working on bundles, alternative payment arrangements, things of that nature. The fact is that our drug cost and our health care costs have been going up at a faster pace than the governor's budget or the legislature appropriates money. We have to live within our budget like everyone else, and that's where our focus is for the clear pricing project going forward.
Yeah, do you see a necessity of expanding outside that original 25,000?
Well, absolutely.
In the near term, at least?
Yeah, I mean, we would love for the cartel who have exercised cartel-like activities, and the Webster's and probably the biblical definition of that is an association that is formed to restrict competition and or raise prices. That's why I feel very strongly about and solid about using that word. We would like for them who now control most of the other providers that didn't sign up for clear pricing are all controlled by the cartel. And the fact, as I said before, that they will not accept nearly 100% profit as a non-profit is absolutely absurd. And the president feels this way. Most everyone that's going to be speaking at the Democratic debate next week feels this way. And anyone who's on the side of secret contracts, cartel-like activities, lower quality, higher cost are ultimately going to be on the wrong side of history.
Yeah, regarding those entities, are y'all still in negotiations with them, having conversations? Do you see a path to kind of leveraging to get them into y'all's project?
Well, we started out at about a 70% profit over Medicare reimbursement rates, no counteroffer. We raised it, no counteroffer. We raised it again, no counteroffer. We raised it another time, no counteroffer. At the end of the day, we should have taken the admonition of the famous poet from Winston-Salem, Maya Angelou, who said many years ago that when a person shows you who they are the first time, you should believe them. And one of the first times we met with this group, they told us that there is no reimbursement rate that they would accept in order to get rid of secret contracts. We should have believed in them because that's exactly how they've operated since then. Obviously, our door. Obviously, our door remains open to work with them, but I just want everybody on this call to step back and just visualize this for a moment. What type of economic activity would we have in North Carolina if we were known as the state with transparent health care? You couldn't. It'd be an economic gold mine for North Carolina to be known as the state. You look at the reports that just came out of U-Haul in the last 48 hours about the number of people moving to North Carolina, Florida, and Texas. Just imagine what it would be like if we were known as the state that had transparent health care. And on a personal level, what impact it would have on the working people of this state. The working people of this state, in many instances, you know, they're cooking their dinner and they slice their finger pretty badly and have to go to the emergency room. In many instances, a lot of the working people of this state are one kitchen accident away from putting themselves in a financial vortex that they can never get out of after they visit an emergency room. And I interrupted you. I'm sorry, Seth.
Oh, no, I was just going to ask, so operationally, we should assume that y'all are, as much as you want the other providers to get involved in this, y'all are focused on implementing the plan as it stands with the $25,000 this year.
Yes, but we're working on alternative payment arrangements, the advisory groups, and also the bundles. And the working groups and the advisory groups to the state health plan are going to be very valuable. But once we can demonstrate that we can show people what the price is going to be, we can push the power out to the consumer. We're very confident in our 720,000 participants. They're going to, when they are giving those choices like they have in every other aspect of their life, that they're going to be able to make good quality and cost decisions to the benefit of them and to the state health plan, the taxpayers like them that help subsidize this. As I've said before, the Clear Pricing Project was not just about savings to the plan. Initially, this had to do with $50 million worth of out-of-pocket savings to the participants in the state health plan. $50 million.
Sure. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Seth.
Any other questions?
Hi, this is Aaron Sanchez Guerra from the NNO. I'm the business reporter. I joined the call like about 5 minutes after 10:30. I also had a couple of questions if there's still a good time.
Sure. Glad to have you.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah. I believe I haven't met anybody here in person. So I think it's the first time that I get to speak with y'all. I wanted to ask about the state pension and its performance. I know that the Pew Charitable Trust recently released the stress testing report and said the state pension was strong. And I wanted to hear from you, Treasurer Folwell, about that stress testing report.
Well, thank you, and glad to have you with us. We asked for this. At my age, I get stress tests. When through the medical community, and it's not something you always want to do, but it's typically brings information to your attention that is very valuable in keeping something sustainable. And we're talking about preserving, strengthening, and sustaining this pension plan, which nearly 1 out of 10. And Aaron, I would say in your readership, probably possibly 2.5 out of 10 of your readers are actually connected to this pension plan in some way, shape, or form because you're in Raleigh. So we invited them in, just like we invite auditors in. We are always interested in new information or a better way of looking at old information. And what this Pew stress test did, Aaron, is it demonstrated that North Carolina, this pension plan, is very well positioned for the next economic downturn, not if it happens, but when it happens. Everybody on the call knows that stock market's at all-time highs, interest rates and unemployment are all-time lows. At some point, those things will change. And I was looking back over some statistics today and noticed that it's hard to believe, and Aaron, I'm not sure how long you've been a business reporter, but just in the last 19 years, the Standard & Poor's has lost half of its value twice just in the last 19 years. It's pretty dramatic. So our pension plan is one of the safest in the United States. And what the Pew research basically did is it said that not only is it in good shape relative to other plans, but in an economic downturn, the ability to fund it is also one of the best in the country. And after we get off the call, Aaron, we're going to shoot you and anybody else that wants this, the Moody's report that just came out that showed that North Carolina is #1 in the country, not the 5th best, but actually #1 in its ability to continue to fund the plan through the appropriation process in an economic downturn. #1.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Folwell.
Thank you.
And I know that the stress testing focuses on the strength of the plan and how well funded the state is. But as far as the performance of the pension plan in terms of its investments, could you tell me a little bit about the market timing approach that you've been taking as far as how over $7 billion was taken from public equities and stuck into cash?
Mm-hmm. Well, we don't call it market timing; we call it value timing. Of where the value is, and there's a difference. I'm not the only person who's managing we're not the only people who are managing $100 billion who are having a hard time finding good investments that bring value of safety to our participants. So at the end of the day, with all the reports and all the assumed rates of return and everything else that goes on, at the end of the day, it's very fundamental. We're in the check delivering business, and we are spending over $550 million every 30 days for pension benefits. And even though our pensioners are very interested in all these other topics, the thing they're most interested in is to make sure that check continues to come. And as keeper of the public purse, and as a person who said that as long as I was here, we were going to preserve, strengthen, and find out how to sustain the plan, I felt like that this is a good direction to go in, and that's why the decision was made in consultation with a lot of folks who know a lot more about this subject than I do.
Mm-hmm. And this is a topic that I'd like to ask you more about in depth, but at another time, and ideally in person. So hopefully soon we'll be able to arrange that. Because I know that there's other people on the media call.
Okay. Our door and mine are open to you, so I'm sure that he'll arrange that.
Excellent, great. And as far as and just one more question. I know that taking money from the pension and putting it from equities into cash was something that was also done in 2017, and which now amounts up to around $15 billion in cash. And could you tell me, just to, I guess, essentially to elaborating on what you just said, the benefit, what you believe the benefit will be for the state in sort of preserving these funds and not
Sure.
not making any big investment commitments?
Well, we'll be glad to go over this in detail. Number one is that in my first year as treasurer, I made more investment commitments than either one of the previous two treasurers. So, number one. The Treasurer Moore, I think, made zero in his first year, and Treasurer Cowell made, I think, a $63 million investment, a new investment. But we'll go over this in more detail, and the reason is that we need to show you that when I was sworn in as state treasurer, there was over $10.5, nearly $11 billion of uncalled capital on the pension plan. These are commitments that had been made before I became the treasurer in North Carolina, that to money managers, that the money was going to be tied up generally between 10 and 15 years. And so when you come over, we'll have a more in-depth conversation about all of that. But it's important to say I didn't apply for the job to be treasurer and by telling people I had a crystal ball. And that's true yesterday, that's true today, and that's going to be true tomorrow. What we do as keepers of the public purse is we exercise a fiduciary responsibility of loyalty and duty of care to our members, and we do that every day.
I appreciate that, Treasurer. And yeah, certainly we will. We can speak more about it later on.
Thank you.
Well, if there are no more questions, we'll have some closing remarks from the treasurer.
I appreciate you all joining us. Dave from Business NC, thanks for pointing out the media-only call-in number for the Local Government Commission. It's at 2:30 today. We also put an agenda in there, so whether it's DOT, Rex Hospital, or in the last meeting, Shelby, North Carolina, it was a good way for you folks to tap in and to get information on a real-time basis and interaction. The Local Government Commission, in case you're not aware, is the other commission members are State Auditor Beth Wood, obviously a long history of experience with local government, and she has a big responsibility in actually auditing local governments. Secretary of State Elaine Marshall, Secretary of Revenue Penny, and other members that are appointed by the governor, the Speaker Pro Tem, and the Speaker and the President Pro Tem. So it's a very interesting group, a lot of history on that Local Government Commission, and I think it's going to be a worthwhile thing when you see things on the agenda that are professionally curious to you. It's a great way for you to plug in, and then of course after listening to the call, if you have any follow-up questions about procedural issues or what happened or why this came out this way or what was said or what was done, we'll be glad to do that. But the next 2 decades are going to be centered in North Carolina. The future of North Carolina in so many instances rests in the Treasurer's Office because of issues related to unfunded liabilities, nearly $50 billion of those in the health care and the pension plan, and also things underground that we can't see that are going to cost us, taxpayers, both local and state, billions of dollars in water and sewer infrastructure and other those kinds of things. And of course the rising cost of health care and what it's doing to our citizenry. So all of those topics you can gather information on by tuning into the LGC meetings. And I want to thank Frank and all the folks in comms and Dan and all the folks at the LGC for even making this possible.